Now, I want to take you through some of the decisions that we're making to try to make this pattern language come together. We already have spoken about relatedness, how there's similarity in patterns that are related to the pattern above it. So for example, for water cascade, we can be talking about all these other patterns that are associated with water cascade. In terms of season extension, there's many ways of extending the season. But some of these patterns, or potential patterns, are just a single use, something like low tunnels, or something like perhaps row covers. So is that enough of a use for it to qualify as a pattern? Or is it just an example of how to extend the season, and you can just use these as examples by explaining, let's say, the season extension pattern. So you have a decision to make: how far into detail do you want to go, or how far into single use do you want to go? Some of these patterns, like bioshelter or sun trap, can be used for a lot of other things than extending the season. So maybe that qualifies for it enough to stand alone as a pattern. Okay? So you've got some decisions to make in terms of what's in and what's out. Growing local food, all of these patterns, it seems all of these patterns are multi-use. So they can probably all qualify as being patterns that stand on their own. So then we have to go through the language and select which patterns can contribute and be involved in making in solving a design problem for one particular project. So the ones we saw before were functionally related. This is sort of operationally related in terms of creating a cluster of patterns that can be used in a project. So these aren't related in terms of similarity of function. These are related in terms of what they contribute to the whole. Okay? And you can read through these. For small farms, we can have ponds, alley crops, catch crops, rotational grazing, poultry tractor, keyline cultivation. We can have polyculture orchards. We can have living outdoors in the garden. All those sorts of patterns can contribute to adding aliveness and the quality without a name to the projects they're worked on. And so that's where we want to go with all of this. We want to have this available to everyone. There are some naming protocols. We tend to name patterns as a noun, and we tend to name them in the singular. So that, let's say, for example, if we had composting, compost bin, or compost, which one would you choose? Compost. So, personally, you can choose whichever one you want. You can create your own language. Personally, I would choose compost because it's singular, it's a noun, but it also can kind of harken back to a verb of some kind, an activity of some kind. You know, I'm going to compost now. So we tend to use compost. For farm retail, farm gate, or farm gate sales, which one would you use? Any ideas? You can't be too wrong because there's only 3 to choose from.
You can't be wrong at all. They're all applicable.
They're all?
They're all applicable.
They're all applicable, right? So we have to have one taker on one.
I'm doing farm gate sales.
Farm gate sales?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, well, you can have farm gate sales. I'm not saying you can't have them.
That's an activity.
It's an activity. That's right. That's right. You want it to mean an activity. You want it to mean actually an event. It's actually an event. But we're calling them nouns. I don't know. It's just the protocol that's been used before. That can change. So anyway, I kind of like farm retail because it includes farm gate. And it includes bulk sales to the distributor. And it includes a market garden. Unless farm gate, unless you can legitimize farm gate and draw that out and make enough of a compelling argument for it to be a pattern. So I'm not saying we can't have it. You just have to legitimize. You have to have a legitimate reason for it.
I think farm sales is not there.
Farm sales?
Yes.
Farm sales, actually farm sales would be better because it includes wholesale. So that's great, farm sales. Somebody make a note of that. Okay, all right, so we want to keep it short and descriptive. I just want to go through how Christopher Alexander organized presenting his patterns. It's actually been referred to since as the Alexandrian format. And so this little sort of cascade of how he presented it is how each pattern is presented in that book. So it starts with a heading and a rating. He actually rates these with an asterisk. And so it's sort of a subjective rating, but he's telling you right off the bat how close that he has come, what he feels he has come to the archetype, to the invariant, what he calls the invariant. And if you get two asterisks, you're as close as you can get to coming to the invariant. If you get one, it means that you've captured probably some of those qualities. You've got a little bit more to do, though, to actually make it a true invariant. And if you don't get any, it means that you're compelled to include it somehow, but there's a lot more work to do in terms of finding that quality without a name, or expressing that quality when that pattern is implemented. Then there's a photo, then there's paragraphs, and essentially what he does is state the problem. What compelled you to include this pattern? What was the problem there was initially that made you think of this pattern? And then you essentially describe what the solution is, what that pattern is giving you in the long term. And so this is what, these are 4 pages photocopied out of the book from pattern 171, which is called Tree Places. So then he's starting with the heading. This one has 2 asterisks, and with a photo, and then there's 3 diamonds. Oh, pardon me, there's an introductory paragraph and an end paragraph. So the introductory paragraph just in one sentence describes that pattern and makes a reference to all the other patterns above it in the language, so that you can go back to those patterns and see what they were about and why this pattern fits within that in its sort of functional relationship. And at the end, he relates this pattern to all the other patterns below it or beside it, so that you can see what it's related to. And in between is the problem statement and the solution, and some descriptions there, and usually a little diagram. So he was British, of course, and this is a very sort of prose-like way of expressing those patterns. And it's sort of relaxed, but it's disciplined. And people have taken this on to express their patterns in other languages. All right, so did we finish that section? Yes. Yes, we did. All right, so that was our fourth TED Bite, ladies and gentlemen. We're on to findings.